Welcome to another edition of This or That. I love to sew podcast creation in conjunction with the Curated Curvy YouTube channel. I do believe we have another plucky contestant ready and waiting. Plucky contestant number one, what's your name and where you're from? Oh, that's good, kid, well done. I'm rooting for you. Now, are you ready to go? Psst, come closer. It's a simple game. I ask you some questions, and all you say is this or that. Maybe a minute explanation. It's not that hard. Come on, we can do this. Should we start again? Good. Contestant number one, are you ready to go? Good. Topic number one, sewing prep. Shopping new versus stash busting.
I actually go for both. I love fabric shopping. I just love the endorphin hit of getting something nice into my stash, not necessarily having anything to do with the project. But when I've got something that I want to make, I'll always look into my stash first just to see what I've got. I've got loads of stuff that I've had for years that I've invariably forgotten about and might come back in handy. Go, that will work really well. So I don't necessarily go out straight away to go shopping. Both shopping's always in my life, so it's got to be both in this case.
PDFs versus paper patterns.
Oh, it's got to be paper. I cannot stand PDFs. I'm sorry. I know it's the way. I know it's the future. I know it's the way forward, but I just cannot stand taping them together. They never print off properly for me anyway. They're always out by a good millimetre or two, and it just looks no. I know you can also print off like A0, but that's damned expensive where I am. So paper all the way.
Cutting versus tracing.
I'm going to have to say tracing, but only just. I see the merits of both, and also when you're tracing, you still have to cut out. So it's pretty much you have to do one to do the other anyway. But no, I prefer tracing just because, again, my body shape's always just a little bit different. Nothing fits me straight off the packet, so I have to do a little bit of tweaking here and there. So I don't generally tend to trace out, and then I can go back and refine each time. So yeah, tracing, only just.
Muslin or just go for it?
I'm a muslin girl. I have to, again, because I have slightly different body shape to most of the commercial patterns. I have to make it fit. I'm not going to waste a lot of fabric on something that's not going to fit. I have done that before, even with the muslin, but I find it very useful, and also it helps me to learn the construction method of the garment I'm making. If it's something like a pair of trousers I haven't made for a long time, doing a muslin just helps me get back into the swing of things without ruining some precious fabric. But I also make sure that I try and do my muslin in a very similar fabric, because I've seen too many people do this too many times, and I've said this before. If you're going to make a stretch pattern, you need to practice with a stretch fabric. You simply cannot do it any other way. It will not turn out right, and vice versa. Anything structured, don't use anything drapey. Anything drapey, don't use calico. But so learn what you need to do when it comes to making muslins. But yeah, no, I'm a muslin person.
You got some good answers there, kid. There's some good answers there, right? Topic number two, fabric. In-store or online shopping?
In-store. I just love going into shops, whether I'm looking for something specific or I just want to mooch around. I mean, there are a lot of really good retailers online only, and I love looking at them, and I will always spread my love. But I am at heart an in-store girl, whether it's a day out uptown or whether it's just a smash and grab at my local fabric store. In person for me all the time.
Knits versus wovens.
Wovens, but only just. I don't mind working with knits and stretch fabrics overall, but if I'm going to be honest, what's in my stash right now, the majority of my stash is going to be wovens. I just think they have a better range of types, patterns, and besides, I love satin and silk, and they generally tend not to be too stretchy, so wovens.
Tumble dry or hang to dry?
Hang to dry. I've only ever lived in one house that has ever been big enough to hold a tumble dryer as well as a washing machine. I have had those awful hybrids of a washing machine and a tumble dryer. They just make your clothes hot, but they're still wet. So no, I hang my clothes out to dry every time.
Rotary cutters or scissors?
It's scissors all the way for me, I'm afraid. I'm just so accident prone. I know what's going to happen. I'm going to cut through my hand, cut through the mat, cut through the carpet, and I still wouldn't have made a clean cut into my fabric. So no, scissors all the way. I just prefer it. It's a more tactile approach.
Oh, yes, safety first, kids. Always safety first. Topic number 3, clothing construction. Following the pattern or wing it?
Wing it. I'd like to be able to read patterns. I really would, and I do try and consult patterns, especially when I've come up to a point where it's getting a bit tricky, or there is a specific order you have to sew something in. But as soon as I look at the pattern instructions, I go completely word blind. I panic, and I don't even understand what a notch is. Honestly, I look at it and go, I don't know. I honestly don't know. I don't get it. So I'll wing it.
Bias tape finish or facings?
I'm going to have to say both, and I don't like either. I find facings are a pain because they never fit properly. I don't know. I'm sorry, pattern makers, your facings never fit. But binding, it's such a pain. If you get it too thin and you don't sew it properly, you have to re-sew it. But different patterns and different items of clothing need different things. So it's not necessarily a this or a that. It is what's more appropriate, and so it has to be both.
Overlock seams or French seams?
Again, this is kind of a both thing. I've recently got hold of an overlocker, and yep, no, I am converted, especially for modern sewing. Yep, I'm happy with that. I don't mind French seams either. I'm a little bit clunky at them. I never seem to get it just right, but sometimes you just have to have a French seam if you're sewing with a lace or something particularly delicate. Overlocking ain't going to work, so French seam can actually look really nice. But actually, if I really want to finish my seams, I prefer a hand fell. I just love hand sewing. Historical or modern, yeah, it doesn't really matter. But no, both. I'm going to have to say both on this one.
Button fly or zip fly?
I must confess, I've actually not done either. I've never made a pair of jeans. I will do. I do have a pattern I want to try, but no, I haven't really done anything. So if I'm going to have to choose one, I'll probably choose a zip fly because I've sewn zips in the past. And yes, I've done buttons, but that seems something a little bit more complicated. These buttons aren't, especially on jeans, they're not your average button. They have to be properly put in, and no. So I think if I'm going to have to choose one, it's going to be a zip fly.
Buttons by hand or machine sewn?
Buttons by hand. Now, I've done both, and I can see the virtues of both. Actually, most people, you can sew buttons on by machine. You do need to be a little bit careful. You need to make sure you get your calibration right, because yes, you can absolutely shatter everything on this planet if you get it wrong. But I actually quite like hand sewing anyway, and there's nothing nicer than getting some nice silk twist thread and just individually sewing in the buttons. It feels like a final process. I mean, I hate finishing because if you've got it wrong by this point, you're unlikely to get it right again. But I do much prefer buttons by hand than by machine.
Fusible interfacing or sew-in interfacing?
Again, it's going to be a bit of a both, and I don't like either. I've never found a really good quality interfacing, either fusible or sew-in. The sew-in stuff is a bit stronger, it's a bit sturdier because it doesn't disintegrate quite as quickly, but I just hate working with it. And fusible, fusible's really nice, you get it going, get it in there, but after a couple of washes, it turns to mush. So both, but I don't like either. Is there an alternative? Please let me know, because I'll be very interested to know.
Snip as you go or all at once?
I would say snip as I go. It's not hard and fast. It's more snip as you go than I do all at one end, but it depends on what I'm sewing. I made a pair of 1790s short stays recently, and I had to actually snip. I couldn't snip as you go because there was just so many different bits, and it was like you'd have to work through. So I ended up doing snip in one go. But I think ultimately, if I was to think about how I work, it is going to be snip as you go.
Press as you go or all at once?
I don't know, actually. I tend to press it in batches. So I actually can't. I think I'm neither. I don't sew a seam, go and press. Sew another seam, go and press. But then I don't sew a complete garment and then press it. I do kind of an in between. That's because I don't like leaving my iron on for too long. I've got one of those super duper fancy ones that shut themselves off after 9 minutes. But my sewing room is my front room, and I've got cats and I've got my boyfriend walking around, so it's just safe if I unplug it each time. So I tend to sew a few seams, get to a point before I start adding other bits and pieces, then I go and press them, and I go back and carry on, and then I sort of do it in batches that way. So sorry, it is not a great answer, but I don't do either because I do something genuinely in the middle.
Ah, that's good. Okay, we're nearly there. Just 3 more questions to go. Topic number 4, sewing habits. Late night seamstress or daytime seamstress?
Now, I used to be a late night sewer, but when I was on my own and single, it didn't really matter what time I went to bed. But now I'm a bit more conscientious. So if I had to put one, I'm a day sewer, but I'm also more an evening sewer because I'm typically working during the day. So I don't get to sit down and sew properly until after dinner, which is going to be gone 7 o'clock. And then I kind of stop by about 9 because, you know, it's just a little too late, especially with my boyfriend around. Now, if he goes away for the weekend, which occasionally he does, visiting family, then I might do a late night. I do enjoy doing that. There's something strangely rewarding about testing yourself and going as late as possible. Lord knows what my neighbours think, but no, typically I sew in the evening, but if I had to choose one, I'm a day sewist.
Slow and steady versus frantic sewing.
I would say I'm a slow and steady, and to the point where I actually end up frantically sewing. You know what I'm talking about. You start off with the best intentions, you give yourself plenty of time, and then you start, you know, you're pootling along and you're nicely sewing, and then for whatever reason the deadline creeps up at you and you're just going, no, I haven't got this done, and then you're flying, you're basically throwing it through the sewing machine, trying not to sew your fingers together. Yeah, no, I am a slow and steady, but that sometimes leads into the frantic sewing, so both.
Now just one more, kid, come on, you can do it, I know you can. Dig deep. Tidy as you go, or one big cleaning session?
I'm a tidy as you go. As I've said before, I work in my dining room, which is through into my front room. So every time I finish, I have to tidy up. So when I finish at 9, I don't normally sit down on the sofa until about 9:30 because I need to put stuff away, I need to tidy stuff up if I need to throw away scraps or anything like that. So I actually have to tidy up each and every time. If I had my own sewing space, it probably would end up being one session as you go, because what would be the point if you're working on the same project to tidy up each and every time? But at this moment in time, I am a tidy as I go.
Oh, that's great, kid. You did really well. Big round of applause for our plucky contestant.
This has been a Crazy Cat League Productions. You've been watching an unoriginal idea. Until next time, guys. Bye bye.
That was my line.